A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back to Survival of No Limits. Oh yeah, there's certainly no limits here with this one. Now it's time to move on to something that might seem more obscured, but you'll probably get what I'm talking about as soon as I basically give you the gist of it. Number 88, zombification. Yeah, you probably knew that this was coming at some point. For me to talk a little bit about the zombie apocalypse as it is, actually, you know what? I'll probably say the zombie apocalypse as a separate subject later on, but until then, let's just talk about the process of zombification. To put it bluntly, in a way, zombification has in fact been something that does not necessarily seem to exist very much outside of pop culture. If you're a fan of films and shows out there relating to zombies, like The Walking Dead and Dawn of the Dead, to video games like Dead Rising and Resident Evil, then it is certain that you probably already know what I'm talking about. The zombie itself. George Romero once said, "When there is no room in hell, the dead will walk the earth." And that quotation specifically points out to the fact that there's always a likelihood that we're bound to face some existential crisis of a magnitude that is going to be well above most others that we've suffered through so far. But considering how we've practically been fighting our way through an entire pandemic worth of problems, these past couple of years have certainly quite frankly left us behind with a lot of questions that are probably going to be left unanswered for a long time. But yet we do have yet to see a synopsis on life itself that could turn out to be the worst possible stage in human existence that we've ever come across. And I'm speaking of a certain existential crisis that is bound to show up. The zombie apocalypse. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there has actually been the likelihood of something like this happening. Not many people are going to perceive zombies as a real life existing thing that happens in society. But it is worth noting that the process of zombification may not necessarily match up to what pop culture explains to us in every single gritty, specific detail that is possibly met so far. But the process itself has actually been met with a lot of terrifying outcomes, as it turns out. The process itself, relating to an anomaly that happened way back in the day in Russia over 80 years ago, known as the zombie virus, in which it was certainly made to transform the Walking Dead into near unstoppable killing machines that would be used against the world at some point. They extracted the virus, packed it into vehicles, and had it delivered over to American soil at some point. It is worth noting that there's always going to be the likelihood that our own soil is going to be festering with walking corpses that'll one day rise up and claim our nation as a whole, especially when we least expect it. Lots of people are not necessarily aware of situations as they are, but let's just say that when it comes to the process of zombification, that's how you know that it is in fact a real anomaly. For it to be used on humans is almost unlikely. Yet we are looking at some things that have happened throughout recent history that have actually taken place. These are things that have happened. We always have the likelihood at some point in our lives that we're always going to be facing something that is severely unprecedented. Yet we do have to find out for ourselves, here in the present, not the past or the future. Well anyways, to take a look at the process of zombification as a whole, throughout the first few steps, all the way out to the very outcome as it is. The brain is the primary focus of how the process of zombification starts and finishes. Whether it would be a certain organism, if it's viral, bacterial, parasitic, or otherwise, that can somehow gain control of your brain, then you are likely to face this exact thing yourself. And this is in fact something that has been tested throughout history, especially with a lot of things out there, considering many animals out there, especially ones that are smaller in stature, as they are easier to work with. There's especially been the case involving zombified rats, and sometimes other creatures as well. Then of course there is the famous case of the zombified deer, which is a whole nother story. Yet it's still terrifying to know that if something of this type does end up falling into the wrong hands, we are bound to face a real-life zombie apocalypse. Well, you know what? Talking about zombification itself is really scary, even by my standards, and I'm known to be rather brave amongst anything that can happen. Well, you know what? Tune in 2 more days, where I'm actually going to be talking about the process of a possible, scenario involving zombie apocalypse based events that could potentially take place in the future. If it does happen tomorrow, next week, next year, or even 50 years from now, no matter what it is, we're always going to be likely to have something like this take place. Well, stay tuned for when I talk a bit more about this whole entire thing involving zombified humans. And if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.